A month and a half ago, I picked the biggest roller coaster team in NBA history to win it all, and man, was I wrong. I got mesmerized by what I thought would be the depth, the length, the best wing duo in the wing league, the defensive foundation they built, the experience they had, the two all-NBA players they had, them being together longer than anybody not named Golden State. This all convinced me that they would come out victorious. But all the ups and downs through the last 365 days, all the bad late game execution habits they built through the year, and their two best superstars not really being reliable superstars when it matters most, it just came back to hunt them. Today's video is sponsored by Manscaped. Father's Day is coming up, and Manscaped literally has the perfect collection of gifts that any man would appreciate. You can start with their Beard Hedger trimmer, which features a 7,200 RPM motor and a titanium coated T-blade to cut through like a James Harden style of beard. It also has a built-in rotary wheel that features 20 different hair cutting lengths. They also have the Weed Whacker 2.0 that's perfect for your nose and those little ear hairs. This features a powerful 7,000 RPM motor, a rechargeable battery that lasts up to 45 minutes of active runtime, is cordless, and is waterproof. And you can top it off with the perfect downstairs trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. Or if you want to combine those last two in one big bundle, try the Performance Package 4.0. This package includes the Lawnmower 4.0, the Weed Whacker 2.0, a crop preserver, a crop reviver, and 2 free gifts. Pops, he's going to be happy. If you need the perfect gift for any dad that you may know, go to manscaped.com right now and get 20% off plus free international shipping when you use my promo code SWISH at checkout. That's 20% off plus free international shipping when you use my promo code SWISH, only at manscaped.com.
But we begin with the developing story that we mentioned at the top of the show. 3 months after leading the Boston Celtics to the NBA Finals in his first season as head coach, Ime Udoka facing a likely full season suspension.
Is this team too reliant on the three-point shot? Does that have to change?
No.
It's crazy because when you really think about it, the Boston Celtics have actually been on this big-ass roller coaster going back to last season. Literally, the biggest flip of the year was Boston. They started their first 50 games 500, had Marcus Smart calling out their two best players, had people talking about breaking up their two best players, and then they finished stronger than anybody possibly in the history of the sport. Had the best record in the league, had one of the strongest, most disciplined defenses in the league, and essentially broke up the never was era that KD and Kyrie was in Brooklyn. And even after all the success they had post the 50 game mark going back to last year, and with them destroying Brooklyn and making the NBA Finals, they still did it in the weirdest, hardest way possible. Bro, look at the last few conference champions. I took out the bubble year because obviously home court didn't even exist in that environment. But look at their home playoff records. All of them are at least above 500. Milwaukee, when they went, they were 10-1 at home. Phoenix, when they went, they were 8-3. The Heat this year, they're 6-2. Denver, they're undefeated. Even pre-pandemic, the Warriors, they were at least a game above 500, even with the drama and injuries they had. The Raptors, they were 9-4. Last year, Boston, they were 500 at home. And mind you, all of those losses came after the first round because they swept Brooklyn. Those 6 playoff games they lost last year at home were the most a Boston team has lost in a single playoff run in the history of their existence. And guess what? They came back this year and did the exact same thing. And in fact, they did it a little bit worse. Miami talks about wanting to take the hard route to get where they want to be, but really that represents Boston just as much, if not more. Last season and this year, out of every team that played more than 4 playoff games and essentially just didn't get swept, they had the worst home playoff records for back-to-back consecutive years. And oddly enough, they offset it because last year they had the best road playoff record all season, and this year they had the exact same thing. This year, out of every team to ever play at least 12 road playoff games, which is actually insane to think about when you had home court in every single series, they have the second best winning percentage ever. So they oddly know how to execute when their backs are against the wall. They just struggle to win in front of their fans. And a lot of their playoff struggles, to me, stems from their two best players who are superstar talents, but they're so inconsistent and so unreliable. Last year, Jason Tatum had 100 total playoff turnovers. That's the most in a single playoff run ever. After going up 2-1 against Golden State in the finals, they lost 3 straight playoff games. Tatum and Brown in those 3 games combined for 27 total turnovers. They lost all 3 of those playoff games by double figures. 2 of them were at home. So again, going back to last year, this team lives to make their jobs harder and to not execute in the most pivotal moments when they supposedly have the advantage. Then continuing the up and down roller coaster, they have the weirdest good-bad offseason I've ever seen in my entire life. Even with that being the case, the talent and the roster and the depth alone propelled them into being this juggernaut of a team all season this year. They won the most games they had in like 13 seasons. They had 2 players averaging over 25 points a night. They had 2 All-NBA players. They had the 6th man of the year. They destroyed the league in point differential. They led the league in net rating. They were the only team that was top 3 offensively and defensively. But this team, they had glaring flaws that unfortunately came to the light when it mattered most. I don't even know if it's fair to blame a young ass coach like Joe Mazzulla when you have an experienced roster like they do, but for whatever reason, this team just couldn't close games all year. I remember around mid-March, they had a drought in which 5 of their last 7 losses were losses where they blew 14-point plus leads in 5 of those 7 games. And look at the losses. That's embarrassing. Those bad late game execution habits, they unfortunately followed. This season, even with how dominant they were, and I just gloated about all the damn stats they led. You know what team led the league in overtime games? And this is not a great stat. Like, this means you're not closing out games in regulation like you should be. It was the Boston Celtics, and they were 3 games under 500 in this extra period. Also, this team, and I tried to put a blind eye to it because when they hit them, I mean, they look really good. But they lived and died by the 3 way too much. This season, the Celtics, they were 2nd in 3-point attempts and 5th all time. This year, the Celtics, they shot the 2nd least amount of 2-point attempts, only above Dallas, and we know how that ended for them. In the playoffs, this one-dimensional formula, it translated and it ultimately didn't end well. Even with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, 2 players that I believe are creative enough and dynamic enough to get to the basket off the dribble, they were 3rd in 3-point attempts and next to last in 2-point attempts and free throw attempts. And going back to them not being able to finish games and them being terrible in late game situations, specifically at home, that followed them as well. This team went 6 games with Atlanta. No disrespect to Atlanta, but why did they go 6 games with Atlanta? That's because in game 5, they blew a 13-point lead with 6 minutes left. Against Philly, one without literally the MVP, they lost 2 crucial home games. Against Miami, they had home court advantage and they lost 3 of their 4 games in Boston. One of those games, game 2 to be exact, they blew a 9-point lead in the 4th quarter. Game 6, where Derrick White had the game-winning putback, they tried their hardest to blow a 7-point lead with like 3 minutes left. Also, their best 2 players, they're way too inconsistent. In the first 3 games in which they fell down 0-3, a 3-point shooting team and their 2 best players, they're a combined 7 for 40 in the first 3 games. Jaylen Brown was pretty much terrible all series. Look at him in the second half of these games. Last night, and I like Jaylen Brown, but he literally had one of the worst elimination games ever, and that's no exaggeration. Last night, this man had 8 turnovers. That was top 10 in an elimination game ever. Out of everybody in that top 10, he had one of the lowest field goal percentages, he had the lowest plus minus, and he was only one of 3 that did this at home. Going back to last year, this team just lives to put themselves in situations where their backs are essentially against the wall, and it's strange. This year, they played double the amount of elimination games compared to anybody else. Going back to last year and this year and last year combined, they played 10 elimination games. Nobody's played more than 4. For the most part, they ultimately execute with their backs against the wall. Before last night, they had just won 8 straight elimination games versus the East. But it's only so long you can keep doing that. Also, that one-dimensional style, it eventually ran out. This year, they were 38-3 when they shot above 40% from deep. They were 2 games below 500 when they didn't, so it's just hard to live like that. If you guys like this video, this loss is also bad because it puts real question marks with this team's future. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they're set to both make like $613 million combined because they both made all NBA teams. And with the new CBA, I don't know if Boston really wants to do that, but you don't want to lose those 2 as well. So it gets very tricky after this. Make sure you guys follow my social media sites, turn on post notifications, do all that great stuff, guys. And until next time, as always, stay tuned.